There's a slight inconsistency with the title, but essentially the same. It's flight software probable failure reporting process. This really comes from my experience working on MSL, the Mars Science Laboratory, and I'm told that Marek Tuzinski is in the audience, and I listened to Katie's presentation as well this morning. So I actually worked for Marek as part of this process. I worked under him. So Marek can offer a lot of information regarding this. So I'll just sort of dive into it. And so I'll give a little bit of the back history. My background is in flight software, and I was roped into MSL to address a significant issue, the extremely large number of open flight software problem issues pre-launch. And there really weren't enough people to help reduce this number. So myself and a few others were pulled in. And so what happened was we were pulled into this team, and we worked under Marek, and Marek also reported to Ben Suchi. And our goal was to sort of drive down and essentially help close out these flight software issues. So what's a PFR? A PFR can be described as a documented history of a flight software problem, which really traces the problem from origination through verification, through the complete resolution, and the testing of the resolution. It provides really a historical artifact that can be viewed by the project team members, which may manifest themselves in different settings. So it's a document that can be accessed by the team members. And so this talk is primarily about the flight software PFRs. There are other kinds of PFRs, hardware PFRs, and whatnot. Just for my sanity, if Allison, if you can give some verbal feedback to let me know that you can hear me okay, that would be great.
Yeah, you're doing fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So there are two important aspects of this. The software problem itself, or failure or anomalous behavior, and really the complete reporting of these incidents. So a software issue in the flight software manifests itself somewhere, and you really want to try and get to the bottom of that. Not only solve that, but really disseminate the information about this software problem to the other project members. So really, the situation you want to avoid is sort of localized knowledge of the software issue. You want to understand the issue and then propagate the knowledge of that issue to other team members, because a software issue can have cascading effects on the entire mission. And so poorly understood software issues can pose a serious threat to a mission. So the idea is to sort of get the knowledge of these issues out into the open. You want to avoid sort of hidden knowledge, secret knowledge. And so flight software development would really be very difficult without proper tracking of these software problems. And if you think about software problems, they can manifest themselves in various settings of this. They can occur in unit testing. They can occur in regression testing. They can occur in the test bed. You're trying to work through a procedure and something strange happens. They can occur using the simulation. So if you're in a different venue and you encounter some issue, you don't understand it, so what do? You want to sort of report this. So you create a PFR. So the other issue is that even in the flight software development, in testing, you can have problems that occur there. And the flight software test the flight software developers also have their own problem reporting tools, which are separate from the more global flight software PFR tool. And so what you do find is a lot of the internal software problems that occur during development or occur during unit testing eventually get propagated into full-blown problem failure reports. Now, if these problems can be tied to a specific issue or conditions, then the problems can be understood, and then you can document the fix or work around. And so that's essentially the core of the PFR. And sometimes when you finally get down to the bottom of things, you might find that there may not need to be a fix. So either you can sort of live with the issue, you understand the problem, and there's sort of a workaround, so you can sort of deem that as a use as is issue, or it may not even be a problem at all. There might be an issue and someone not following the correct procedure, and they ran into a situation, and it might not even be a problem. Or if the software might be behaving as expected, according to the requirements. It was sort of driven to a situation where that was it wasn't supposed to be working in. So, looking at when you finally resolve the software issues, you have a lot of PFRs. They sort of give you a measure of the reliability of your software, so the number of PFRs you have, and it sort of gives you an idea of the effectiveness of the code coverage. If you look at the PFRs tied to a specific module, for instance. And so sometimes you can have a lot of PFRs tied to particular instruments or that sort of thing. And so where do software problems occur? Really everywhere. If you look at MSL, there are just so many instruments, so many devices, and software controlling all of these devices. And I saw PFRs tied to pretty much everything listed here. And the way the team worked is we were pretty much divided into PFRs involving specific instruments. So I worked on a lot of UHF PFRs, DAM PFRs, and a lot of the MMM instruments, and also some of the DAM PFRs as well. And the other team members worked on some of the others. But my experience was that there were software problems occurring, software problem reports tied to pretty much everything. And this number grew over time. And so if you look at it at a global level, within a spacecraft, there are lots of hardware and software interactions. You have instrument software modules, and things are talking to, everything is talking to one thing or another. And so what you have is that you can have purely software-related issues where the interaction is within a module. It can actually be between two modules. It can be between a module and a piece of hardware, or the issue might be solely located in the hardware device. So it's important to identify where the problem is occurring and what organization is really responsible for trying to resolve the issue. So if it's the hardware issue, the issue might be pushed to the hardware groups, and they might handle the PFR in their domain, and the flight software folks might have no responsibility over it. But we will be seeing the effect of, the fault in the hardware, and that happens. And so, what is the process? How do we really look at PFRs and get them to a point where we can really close out the software issues? So I list here a bunch of the steps that were necessary in trying to close out software issues. The steps are generally originating the software issue, doing some verification and validation, identifying why the issue happened, coming up with a resolution or some form of corrective action, testing the corrective action, making sure that the issue is fixed, and then trying to examine, did we actually break something else in the process? And then closing it out. And closing it out is actually a very important step. So if you look at this picture, you have sort of the beginning and the end. And I see that one of the most important aspects of this picture is the creation of a software issue and the effective closeout of the issue. So when you create a software issue, you want to give as much detail as possible. You want to give the environment under which the problem occurred, the flight software version and the branch, the ground system version that was used to interact with the flight software. If a ground system tool was not used, you want to sort of give the procedure that was used, the procedure version, the procedure number, the test bed location, the time at which the test occurred, the conditions that the test was stimulating, whether it was sort of an in-situ test, a cruise test, or a launch test, or an EDL test. And you want to paint as detailed a picture as possible for those who are going to examine this issue. And this is very important because it helps those looking at the software issue to quickly prune out issues that have no bearing on the problem, and to really create in their mind the exact scenario the problem occurred under. And so when you have a well-created and well-documented problem report, you can then hand that over to the analysts who are going to start looking at this problem and who are going to try to get to the bottom of the issue. So it then moves to sort of a verification and validation phase where the PFR is mapped to the flight software test bed reports and also the internal flight software reports that where this issue occurred. So in a test bed, there are activity logs that essentially document the testing that occurred when this problem first manifested. And so the analyst will want to look back at those activity reports and also the internal flight software reports as well. After looking at the reports, they'll also want to identify why this issue occurred. Why did this happen? And so there will be some dialogue with the flight software developers to essentially communicate with them to understand where the flight software the problem manifested. Was it a bug in the flight software? Was it really an algorithmic sort of problem? Was it a behavior interaction that was not well understood? And as they start to identify the issue, they start to get closer to a resolution, a way to fix it. So there's typically some debate that goes on between the flight software developers in their internal flight software tools. There's a reporting sort of a tool that we call JIRA, and in that tool you can see the commentary of the flight software developers where they comment with one another on ways to fix this. And there's typically some back and forth dialogue that goes on, and they eventually come up with a resolution. And the resolution is then implemented in a newer version of the flight software. And an initial peer review process starts to begin on the resolution. So once the software is fixed, it's then up to the test team to go back to the environment where the problem first occurred and attempt to try and rerun the newer version of the flight software or the newer branch. and to see if the fix is complete. And sometimes the fix works, and sometimes they come back and say, oh, you actually broke something else, or they'll say, oh, the fix is not complete. We need to also take into account these other considerations. At some point, you get to a point where everything is completely fixed, and so you're very happy. In a great scenario, the software is completely fixed, and you close it out, and it's the end of the story, and there's no residual risk. Sometimes there might be some. It might not be a complete fix. There might be some residual risk, and so you have to come up with a designation. So you can say, okay, we fixed it to this point. We can live with it. In a later version, we will implement a more complete fix. We can use it as is. But this information is documented completely in the summary. And so, just as in the origination, where you have a very detailed account of how the problem occurred, in the closeout of the problem, we really want to have a very detailed, at least some sort of summary indicating whether the issue is completely fixed, the version of the flight software that it was fixed in, and if there's any residual risk tied to the fix that needs to be noted. And so, a couple of important things about PFRs. A PFR should be tied to its originator. So the person who created it needs to be pegged to the particular issue, whether willingly or unwillingly. It's important to know, who originated this. It's very important to understand where the issue originated, test development, core requirements, procedures, and a very important aspect is the various team members need to be included in the communication chain. So, in trying to address the issue, it's really bringing together the flight software team, the system engineers, the instrument folks, and also the test bed folks, so that you really close the loop on a particular problem. When you're looking at a PFR, it's very important to quickly identify some sort of risk level. Is this something that can impact the mission in an adverse way? And also, is this issue related to other issues? Did this issue manifest itself as another PFR? Are these family of PFRs grouped together? Are they all tied to a particular root cause? We often saw problems that were tied to a particular root cause. And so when you see that, you can actually make annotations in the problem failure report of the list of the different PFR numbers that are related to one another. So in MSL, these are some of the numbers that came out after we landed. We reviewed over 1,700 flight software PFRs, and also 3,400 flight software requirement PIs, and just closed out a lot of issues. It was a lot of work. Pre-launch, we worked to close out over 300 open flight software issues, and post-launch, we continue to work through some EDL and surface PFR issues. And so I think Katie alluded to this, that after launch, there was a lot of development still going on in various areas of the mission. And so some of these issues led to the creation of Operation Flight Rules, and I'll get into that later in the slide. So, is Marek in the audience? Allison, can you let me know if Marek can wave his hand?
Yes, I'm here.
He's here.
Okay. So Marek should be very familiar with this chart because this is something we looked at a few times a week, maybe once or twice a week. This was the flight software Burndown plan pre-launch. And Marek can actually speak to this if he's willing. Mark, do you want to share anything about this? Because I know you were very intimately tied to this.
Yes. I don't know if you can hear me, Amalaye, or is this just here within the audience?
Can you hear him? Yeah, okay.
Maybe this mic back here is the better one to use. So, actually, one of the things I'll add to some of the things Amalaye said earlier.
Okay.
Oh, he can't hear you.
Can you turn it on?
Okay.
It's,
Hold on, give us 1 second, Amalaye.
Okay, sure.
We're playing microphone bingo.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, Mark.
Hello. So one of the things I just wanted to add to some of the things that Amalaye said that's very important in that closeout process, where I think he was most involved in, was ensuring that we understood the root cause of the PFRs, and then that all the proper documentation was taken care of. It was properly summarized for anybody that would look at it in the future. That the retest, in fact, did do the retest that verified the problem, or it wasn't just a retest that passed, but didn't happen to actually exercise the flaw correctly, and also that the fix was complete. Because oftentimes the developers just react to the problem as identified or as reported, but there's some underlying issues, or the problem might extend to a couple different areas and they didn't catch that. And then also fields that are useful, like whether this was a problem introduced in coding or in requirements and that kind of stuff. And I also wanted to mention something important, because Amalaye brought up JIRA versus the PFR and the internal or external tracking tool. We did employ, actually let me start with the PFR system, is an institutional tracking tool, as Amalaye said, for all sorts of problems, and it is a much more formal system that needs direct approval. And it's both for hardware and software and all sorts of other test issues and such that happen after products are delivered and are going through system integration and test. The software team used the JIRA tool, which I think was extremely effective for many reasons, many things, but one of the main things we used it for also was internal issue tracking and software change requests as well in the same form. And that tool was specifically designed for the flight software team to use. Had a lot of software-specific life cycle fields, which weren't captured in the institutional system. So we had a lot of problem is, of course, it's a separate tool. So there's the overhead of dealing with two different tools trying to track perhaps the same problem. We use the JIRA system as a change request tracking tool as well. So we had multiple issues if it was fixed in multiple modules for the same problem, or even multiple versions of software after we had branched off for EDL or things like that. The important things to note was also sort of trying to keep these things in sync, but because the internal tool was so much more of a working tool on a day-to-day basis that was used directly by the developers, it had a lot more information than was appropriate for the institutional tool, and that's where Amalaye and a few others were extremely helpful in terms of, we wanted to keep the developers focused on the development, and what Amalaye was involved in was sort of getting the important, pertinent data out of the internal tool, paraphrasing it properly, getting into the institutional tool for the system people to digest just the fix and not all the possible root causes that were considered in leading up to it, or not all the potential fixes to repair it, and such. And that process, because these were separate tools and we were just focused on meeting schedule and delivery, got backlogged. And that's, at one point, actually, when you look at this chart, what you're seeing is, in early 2011, we actually had 300 issues that were in this closeout phase but weren't yet closed. So that's why the title there is Flight Software Signature Burndown Plan. We actually brought up, we realized the number of issues was intense. We had, in the end, across the whole project, 17,000 issues in our internal tracking tool and 1,700 or so in the external institutional tool. But they were coming in faster than we could close them out. And this is actually a net chart of how we were just burning down 300. But by the end of this picture, that there was probably another 1,000 issues that came in. And so we were trying to predict not only our rate of closing those out, but at what rate new ones would come in, which constantly exceeded our expectations. We thought we'd be mature and stable, and people kept testing and finding problems. Part of this was also because the test program was a little bit backlogged as well, so they were late to find stuff. But what Amalaye is showing on this chart is the plan of how we were going to burn down, and we see that, and you actually have the actual on top of that, and we did a pretty good job of catching. Go back one still, so we actually did a pretty good job initially of getting this team of, I believe, 3 or 4 people, and myself included, in helping that and burning them down. But because they were coming in faster than we could handle, still with that effort, that gap between plan and actual started diverging. And as of June of 2011, you can actually see we had planned to be close to 0, but we weren't. And we actually did some corrective action, brought even additional resources on, and established a new plan, which you can see there, and we're able to bring that down. I don't think it actually quite went to 0, so we must have done something funny there. But with the chart anyway.
Let's see. So the next chart is similar.
Oh, go ahead, Alan.
Okay. So again, like Mark said, at the beginning of the year, we just had a lot of issues open, and you can see the blue line and the red line where it started out 0 recommended, and then we started to close that gap between issues being tracked and those being recommended. So one thing that I really wanted to point out, I think Mark also mentioned, is sort of what I call left-hand, right-hand issues, sort of knowing what the other hand is doing, in a sense. So you have on one side your test team, your software developers, your system engineers, your software quality people. And then on the other side, you have people maybe in a separate domain, mission operations, command sequencing people, instrument team, science team, other engineers, other hardware people, managers, and somewhat removed managers, people perhaps at the NASA level, who are looking at, yes?
You're running a bit
Can you-
long. You're running a bit long.
Okay.
All right. So.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so going on to this, one of the things we had to do was to really bridge the information between these two groups of people. And so one of the things that we did was really propagated, we tried to disseminate the information to the other side so that the issues could, if they needed to become flight rules, they would. And so we wanted to make sure that the problems eventually the problems were actually communicated to other teams. And so sometimes PFRs turned into flight rules. And so, as Mark said, there's an intersection of common knowledge. There needs to be a way to efficiently propagate flight software issues between disparate databases and tools. It would be really nice to have the tools and metrics automatically coupled somehow, I think, in the future. Again, I sort of mentioned this. One of the things that we often found ourselves doing was sharing Microsoft Excel spreadsheets as glue between the different teams, and this was time-consuming. And so, going on, in future ideas, I'm really interested in sort of improving this process. So at the testing level, we use a tool called WISDIS, which provides some level of fidelity in terms of being able to test software issues and address them and try and resolve them. But it would be nice to have sort of higher fidelity tools that actually model the processor environment or model the bus environment. And so in the future, I'm actually thinking of tools like Kimu, which is a power, which emulated PowerPC, or something like Simic, but which is very expensive though. Some ideas that some people here at JPL have are moving towards Linux and pushing non-critical processes into user land and minimizing the impact of certain failures. This is more at the sort of software development level in trying to reduce the impact of certain failures. Looking at ways to integrate testing tools using some kind of database connectivity, and then again really mapping from requirements to testing operations. How can we really tie all of these things a lot tighter together? In MSL, we, like Mark said, we closed out a lot of issues, and it was very comforting just to see just a successful landing of the rover, and really just how our efforts really helped reduce any any negative issues in terms of the crews in the EDL stages. So.